Hello and welcome along to Mondo Chelloveck Movies. My name is John and this is going to be a ranking of my Blue Underground 4Ks and also Blu-rays and DVDs. With just ordering today the latest release from Blue Underground on 4K, Uncle Sam, and also next month they are releasing the 4K of God Told Me To. So currently I've got all of the 4Ks released by Blue Underground and I've got to tell you they're absolutely sensational. So personally I think that Blue Underground are the best company out there that are releasing these older movies on 4K. They've got a great catalogue that they're releasing from. Now what I've done is I've put them in. I went on my OLED TV for the first time to check all of these out. I've checked like key scenes from all the movies. I've checked out the black levels in some of them. I've checked out the colourful scenes, and I just want to share my thoughts with that. And what I'm going to do is I've ranked them from. I put them on from what I consider to be the lowest one, which is still good, up to the highest one, which looks absolutely sensational. But first of all, I'm going to talk about the DVDs I've got from Blue Underground. First up, I've got Snuff. Now this was gifted to me by my good friend Nige, aka Rockgod2004, which I will be doing a live stream on Video Nasties with in the future. I didn't even know this was a Blue Underground release because there is absolutely nothing on here that tells you what companies released it, even on the actual disc itself. Now when you put the movie on, it just plays the movie and nothing else, which I think is a good touch actually. It's making this out to be an actual snuff movie, which it isn't. This is presented in a brown paper bag sort of thing, or a brown paper packaging. So on this disc, all you get is the movie, nothing else. The movie does not have any, it doesn't have any menus on here, it doesn't have any chapters on here, you just get the movie and that's it. The movie is shot in 1:37:1, so it's a square movie, which is, if that's the way it was shot, that's the way you should watch it. And the picture quality of it is quite good. Considering, I mean, this movie's from 1976, I think it was shot in 1974, and then they had this extra bit tacked on the end, which was meant to be the snuff part of it. Obviously, there's no credits on the end of the movie, which made you think that this was just literally what it was, but it wasn't. The effects on here are so laughable that you could not believe that this was real. But I think when it was released in the day with all the things that they put with it, the press with it, I think that people did think it was real, but it wasn't. So this is a really good presentation. To be honest, the movie does look quite good for what it is. So that's Snuff. Next up on DVD, my good friend John Hall gifted me The Final Countdown. Now this lenticular cover is amazing because when you move it, you can see the people carrier coming out of the vortex and reappearing. Now this pertains to this movie. It's like a time travel movie where this people carrier, this aircraft carrier, gets transported to another time. It gets transported to when the day before Pearl Harbor began. So the crew are tasked with a quandary. Do they alter time by putting the offence of Pearl Harbor right, or did they let them carry on the way they did? So this movie is absolutely brilliant. But the DVD version does come with this booklet in here, which tells you about forthcoming Blue Underground titles. Now I'm going to talk about that at the end of the video, if you want to stick around. And I'm going to see what ones in there I think might become 4Ks in the future. But this is just such a great cover. And it's got a really good print actually for a DVD. This is a really good looking DVD, and also it's got a lot of surround sound on here. I think it's got 6.1 surround sound, which is a bit of a strange one. So this is a highly recommended DVD, although you don't see it very often. That's The Final Countdown. So next up are the Blu-rays I've got from Blue Underground. Now I used to have quite a few more of these, but I've let them go because I've upgraded to 4K. So I've put these three Blu-rays in order of what I consider to be the worst to the best. So first up here, being the worst here, is The Prowler, otherwise known in the UK as Rosemary's Baby. So there's a few titles in the Blue Underground catalogue which were in the banned Video Nasties section. I think this one was. This was released in 1981 and it's a pretty gory movie actually, pretty gory slasher. Now when I put this on, this has got 7.1 surround sound, believe it or not. And I do think that when Blue Underground do any version of a movie, they do the best version they can. Now when I put this one on, I was quite surprised to see how grainy it was. In fact, it was a lot grainier than I thought. I thought it was a really nice picture, but I was wrong. I must have been thinking about another film. I think Happy Birthday to Me was the one that I was thinking about because it's quite a little bit like that on the start of the movie. And I would like to think if this was brought out on 4K, it would be an instant purchase for me. But they would have to do something about the grain on here. I don't know, because the grain's very noisy at the start of the movie. I don't know if that's just the way it was shot. I hope not, because the 4K would look atrocious if they do that with the amount of grain in there. It would enhance the grain. And I would like to think that this one will come out on 4K, but if the version that they've got here is the definitive version for where the film looks, which usually it is, and when they do a Blu-ray, they usually do a version that you think, oh, this is gonna, if it looks good on the Blu-ray, it looks sensational on a 4K. Now, this one here doesn't look very good at all on Blu-ray. In fact, I was quite surprised how grainy it was. So, on that reason, they're going to have to do some work on it if they're going to ever port it over to 4K. And if the 4K does come out, I'll have to take a good look at it to see if the 4K is worth picking up. So that's quite underwhelming. That's The Prowler. Next up is one of my favourite horror movies of all time. It's 1974's The Living Dead at the Manchester Morgue. This movie is a brilliant movie. I've got a lot of time for it. Again, it's 7.1 master DTS master audio, believe it or not. And the picture quality in here looks really nice. It's one of those ones where you think it shouldn't look that good, but it does. And if this would look sensational on 4K, I know it would. I don't know if it will get released on 4K, unfortunately, because I think this has been talked about getting released on another 4K from another company. I'm pretty sure it has been, actually. I'm going to say Vinegar Syndrome, I guess. And unfortunately, this means that Blue Underground won't get a shot to do it. I hope that they still maybe have the rights, the core rights, however they do this thing. I would love to see them put this out on a 4K, because when they were talking about these 4Ks coming out, this is one of the ones where I thought, I really hope to do this, because this movie has to be seen to be believed. It's one of the best zombie movies that never gets talked about out there. And it's filmed in the UK as well, and I imagine most of the sites that they go and film in will still exist today because they're in the countryside, a little bit like the areas, and you can imagine American Wealth in London. If you look at the way that movie looks, this movie looks like it was shot in the same place, although it probably wasn't. So highly, highly recommended, and the picture quality here is really nice. That's The Living Dead at the Manchester Morgue. Next up is 1973's Torso. This movie is the best looking Blu-ray I've got left from the Blu-rays I had previously. This movie, I think, is a really good giallo. It's one of the best ones I've seen. The picture quality in here is absolutely brilliant. This one is another one, when you see it, you think, as well as Living Dead at the Manchester Morgue, you think, right, if they do a 4K on this, which I hope they do, it would look amazing like all the other 4Ks do to a certain extent. I'll go more into that when I talk about the 4Ks. Weirdly enough, the audio on here is only mono, which is a bit of an odd one, because it's got a great soundtrack, and I'm quite surprised that it was that, because I really thought that everything they did was like 7.1 or at least 5.1. But it is what it is, and if it is, that's the way they've decided to put it out, fair enough. This disc has two versions of the movie on. Has the normal version and the director's cut. And I do know that the Shameless have released this in the UK. I think it's uncut, but I'm not too sure. But I know that the picture quality on this is streets ahead of the one on the Shameless one. Shameless, for some reason, well, way back when, I don't know about so much now, because they're all releasing some good prints at the moment. They seem to be miles ahead. Blue Underground are miles ahead of everybody else when it comes to releasing like the definitive picture quality of a movie. This one's another one that I can't wait to see if they're going to put it on 4K. I think they might do, because they haven't seen anybody else try to put this out in 4K. That's Torso. Okay, so now on to the Blue Underground 4Ks. Now, at this point, there's 12 that's been released, and I've got them all. Got them all with slip covers, and I've left the shrink wrap on them. I've managed to save the shrink wrap on every single one I've got released so far. So every one of these 4Ks, these 12 4Ks, do have Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos. It's like standard. So you know that you're going to get the best picture quality and the best sound quality available. So I'm going to go through these from the lowest quality to the highest quality. So number 12, I've got Maniac. Now this is 1980. This was released. All these movies have embossing on most of the slips, apart from the lenticulars. And the embossing goes on to these bits here. It goes on to bits like this. They've just embossed every single bit that you would think, care to mention, and that should be embossed, is embossed. Little things like that. And you just think, they didn't need to, but they did. That's one of the best things about these slips, I find. This one here was shot in 16mm, and it's never going to look great, but it does look the best I've ever seen Maniac look, because this movie, when you see it on, say, like VHS, it looked very dark and very grainy and very grubby. It is a very grainy and grubby movie, but when you used to see it on VHS, you couldn't really make out any sort of detail at all. This movie here, you can see a lot more detail in the darkness. Not a great deal. The colours are really the star in this movie. They've kind of been able to get the colours, because it's quite a colourful movie, even though most of it's shot at night. and you can see a lot more colours in this than you couldn't really notice at all before. Now this movie is quite a nasty little movie. It wasn't on the banned video nasty list because obviously it wasn't even released in the UK. I think they tried to get it released and they just couldn't. I think even to this day you can't actually get it fully uncut in the UK, I believe. But it's a great movie. I think that Joe Spinell and also Caroline Munro, they play a great part in this, and I think it's one of the greatest movies of this genre from this time, this early 80s slasher movies that you can get. So sadly it's at the bottom of the list because this was shot in 12mm and it just can't possibly look any better than it does. So that's Maniac. So at number 11 is 1978's Toolbox Murders. This again, the same as Maniac, was shot in the 16mm, and unfortunately it can't look any better than it does. But saying that though, this one looks a lot better than the the Blu-ray. The colours on here really stand out a lot more on the Blu-ray. This is another banned video nasty. This is also released by 88 Films in the UK, fully uncut, but the picture quality on it isn't as great as it is on the Blu-ray for this. But the 4K on this just is leaps and bounds above that. They've really, I don't know how they do it, Blue Underground, how they can get this quality of this stuff to look as good as they do. So a lot of credit needs to be given to Blue Underground for the way that they can restore their movies. So that's the Toolbox Murders. So from here on in, all the movies were shot on 35mm, so the quality just jumped up quite a lot. So at number 10 is 1981's Dead and Buried. This is a lovely lenticular slip, as you can see there. The cover underneath is the same cover as this, although you can get another 2 different versions for this. I do think, in reflection, I think I might have preferred to get the one with the nurse with the needle, the syringe going into someone's eye, which is quite, actually, I think it's that. You can see that one there. That would be the cover. There would be another cover you can put on here, which I think would probably be the ultimate cover, or does it go on the front? I'm not too sure. But either way, this is just, I just love these lenticular covers. You don't see too many on these movies, these banned video nasties getting out in this 4K with a lenticular sleeve. I mean, you know, come on, this is like, imagine thinking this back in the day when you're talking about your mates. I wonder if this will ever come out in the future. And then here it is in this spectacular form. So this edition does have the CD soundtrack in it. There's a couple of movies in here which I wished would have had the CD soundtrack, but they haven't, but never mind. And this movie itself is a great movie. I love this movie. Like I say, previously banned video nasty. And it was a funny one because I think it was one of those ones where it might have been category 3, which is one of the ones where you thought if it was in the shops they would have had it taken out, so they didn't put it out in the shops. I never saw it at all to be in the video shop. Well, actually I did, but as soon as the video nasty app came in, I didn't see it again. This one here looks great on the shelf. It's got great fonts on it. It's just a great cover. The movie itself is a really good movie. It's to do with kind of like a funeral home, like someone's dead and buried, or are they? It's got to do with people getting reanimated in a sort of strange way, but I'll not say any more than that, or that'll be a massive spoiler if I tell you a little bit more than that. It does feature Grandpa Joe from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, believe it or not, as a mortician. Wow, I think it was his last role actually. So this one here, unfortunately, it doesn't look that good, or it doesn't look as good as the other ones, because I think the way it was filmed in sort of like misty, like a seaside town, so it's got that air of sort of sea fret in the movie, and it kind of takes away from the sharpness of the movie. But saying that, this is the best it's ever looked. Now this movie's on any form you get it always looks a little bit, it's always got a bit of a bad look to it. It's got a very grainy look to it. This one it is grainy to a certain extent, but it's by far the best it's looked. The colours in here, though, they look really nice. Something you never used to see at all in the other versions of it. They seem to be very drab. So again, HDR is a star, and it's lifted the colours to a different level. So that's Dead and Buried. So from here on in, these movies look absolutely spectacular. I was talking about those other previous 3 ones that had like sort of little issues about the fact that 16mm or they're shot with a bit of a grainy lens, if that's a thing. But these ones here, they all look absolutely sensational. This is the first time I'm watching them all on my OLED TV, so I'm getting a bit of a fresh perspective with them. And I'm seeing certain black levels on movies that I haven't seen before, or certain colour levels that I've never seen before. So it's altered my opinion of them slightly. So I've based that on that when I've looked at them. And now I'm giving you sort of like an honest opinion. It's not my favourite movies, not top of the list. I've just given you purely on picture quality. Obviously the sound quality is always like great on them because they're all Dolby Atmos, and the Dolby Vision helps on every one of them look spectacular, because these ones here, do look amazing, and it's great to see these ones looking as good as they can look. So at number 9 is The House by the Cemetery. This was another previously banned video nasty, which has been brought out by Arrow in the UK. This one here is leaps and bounds above anything that you will see on Blu-ray, and that can go for the rest of these movies now. This is a great movie from Lucio Fulci. It's one of my favourite ones of his. It's much better. When I watched it on this presentation, I used to think this movie was okay, but when I watched it on this presentation, I thought to myself, this movie is just an absolute delight to watch. Again, embossing on the sleeve there. As Lucio Fulci movie goes, this is one of my favourite ones. If you think The Shining, you're kind of halfway there. This is like Fulci's take on that. Not that I really realised that until I watched it, and I thought, hang on a minute, this really does feel like The Shining to a certain extent. There's a lot of dark in this movie, and I think the dark scenes really are helped by the HDR and the black levels on the TV. I can see a lot more stuff, especially the fact that a lot of it happens in the cellar. And when you're looking at the cellar, this is when this movie kind of comes to life. I remember on VHS, you could really not see what was going on in the darkness of the cellar. And it made the movie a little bit, it used to get on your nerves a little bit. I remember watching it and think, well, I know there's loads of stuff going on, but I can't see a thing. And now you can actually see everything in this cellar. You can see everything in the cellar and what's happening in the cellar. So for me, it makes this movie a lot more enjoyable. So highly recommended. That's The House by the Cemetery. So at number 8 is 1982's The New York Ripper. This is another banned video nasty. Now this one is being released by Shameless in the UK, but it's still cut. I can't see this movie ever getting released uncut, but you never know. They are going to release The House by the Park, or The House on the Edge of the Park, which is quite amazing to think they've got that movie out when it's uncut. But I bet if you see that, they're going to make a 4K of it, believe it or not. Now if you see that movie's never been put out in an uncut form, and you see it uncut, you'll probably think, well, it's not that bad. But you've got to think of the elements of like where the violence is aimed to, and you'll understand where the BBC just hated that type of thing. And if that's going to get released now, maybe this one might get released. I highly doubt it, but you never know, because there's some really brutal scenes in this. So the colours on this are next level. Actually, the sharpness of the picture is a little bit more sharper than House by the Cemetery. So that's The New York Ripper. So at number 7, and my favourite movie on this list, can you guess what it's going to be? Yes, it's 1979's Zombie. This movie looks absolutely spectacular. For all these another banned video nasty, here we go again. I know it's been released fully uncut, but just to have all these ones in one company releasing all this previously banned stuff that you can't get your hands on was just immense to be able to just have that like outlet to get this stuff that you can't physically pick up in the UK. And don't forget, all of this stuff is region free as well. There's no region locks on these ones at all, on any of them. So for that, you can just go into it and you know that the Blu-ray is going to play as well, so you don't have any problems with it. Sometimes you need a multi-region to play the Blu-ray version of this if all the special features are on them. But this one here, as they all are, is region free. So this movie is spectacular. I think it's the best zombie movie ever, and I had so much fun with it. I never used to be, but I think when I've seen it on better quality, the VHS I had, or the VHS copy I had, was like abysmal. You couldn't see what was going on at all. Had loads of dropouts. The sound was just all over the place. But then I started to see it on DVDs, like better DVDs and Blu-rays, and like 4K restoration Blu-rays, and then a 4K. So this now is the zenith for me of this movie. I can see this movie's that the director intended as it was shot. So on the island, you have all the blue water around there. You do have the fact that everything's got palm trees, and you have the sort of sand, and you have the greenery of the jungle. It just looks absolutely amazing, and this movie for me is just a pleasure to watch. It's such a good time, and this is by far for me the best looking version of zombie you will ever see. I can't imagine anybody even going near it when they do a restoration of it. I can't see how these restorations can get beat actually because of that good. This is one of the best slipcovers I've got, with this iconic picture of this the zombie with they call him the worm zombie. So yeah, highly recommend. I don't have to recommend this enough. If you don't know this, if you haven't seen this movie, you've got to check it out. So that's 1979's Zombie. So at number 6, it is Maniac Cop 2. So a lot of this movie is shot at night time, And the HDR really does bring the black levels in this to another level. On the OLED TV, you can just see everything that's going on, especially if the sort of ground's wet at night, and you can see all this like reflections and stuff. It's just absolutely, and the colours in here are just unbelievable. It's weird to see a movie that's so low budget and to look absolutely spectacular is one of the things that you would just never imagine. If you think to someone and say, oh, I've got Maniac Cop 2 on 4K, they'd probably laugh at you and say, well, why? Why would you do that? And so you can say, well, because it looks sensational. And I think people might say, well, how could it be? But if they go back to how they do it, go back to the original negatives and they do whatever they do to it. So it just goes to show, don't discount these movies because they're so low budget, because some of them can look absolutely sensational. That's Maniac Cop 2. So coming in at number 5 is the oldest movie on this list. It's 1971's Daughters of Darkness. Now, look at that lenticular cover. I'm hoping we can do it justice. It's so deep, it's unreal. It does have a reversible cover as well. This one does have the CD soundtrack in, which the CD soundtrack on here is absolutely brilliant. It's one of those memorable CD soundtracks when you think, wow, this, I can't believe how good it is. And I'm not just saying that. This is one that's got this is one of these ultimate packages that they do. I don't think every movie has this type of look to it. It's got everything. It's got the lenticular case, got the reversible art, and it's got the CD soundtrack plus the Blu-ray. So yeah, it's everything you could want for this movie. So this movie is a take on the Countess Dracula story, where Countess Dracula, a version of Countess Dracula, does have her hench vampires with her. And it's set in, I'm going to say, it feels like it's set in a really, like a seaside town. And it's to do with how they are trying to go and get more, like, people to make into vampires for their feeding, I believe. But this movie from 1971 is pin sharp. The colours in here are just unreal. I think there's a lot of, it's like a Euro horror one, and it's a lot of, like, furnishings and lots of really good stuff to look at in this hotel where they're staying. It's the real star of this movie is the colours. At night, it looks really good on the beach when they're at night, and you can see this like dusk time, which I love. And also, it's got some bits where there's like a lot of blue on the screen or a lot of red on the screen, which is a bit like Suspiria type thing. But it's got it's like a really good looking movie. They put a lot of detail into how this movie looks. And you can really see on this transfer, it's just unreal. And it's one of those ones that it's like a visual treat as well as being a good movie for me. So that's Daughters of Darkness. So next at number 4 is a movie that I thought would have been lower on the list. It is 1982's Vigilante. So when I put this on, like I say, on my new TV, so I'm seeing these movies in a different light actually. This movie is pin sharp, and when I mean pin sharp, I knew it was a sharp movie anyway. It was sharp, and the Blu-ray was absolutely really good as well. But I can't believe how sharp this is. It's one of those ones where you think this could have been, it wasn't for the clothes that they wear, this movie could have been shot yesterday. Also as well, reversible art, which is brilliant. That's the original poster there. And this movie should have had a soundtrack on it, but they couldn't find the elements for the soundtrack, so the CD isn't available. Unfortunately, it would have been great if they could have done that. You could say this movie is definitely a take on the Death Wish theme, where in the 80s when they had these vigilante people going out and shooting sort of bad guys and that. It's a great movie. And Robert Forster is brilliant, as he is in everything. So is Fred Williamson, who's been in a lot of these type of movies. And like I say, the presentation on here, the picture quality on here, some movies these days struggle to look this good, and you can't imagine how something that was really like a sort of exploitation movie could look this sharp. And it just goes to show, like I keep saying, if you go to the original negatives and you just put the work into it, it can just look absolutely sensational. So that's Vigilante. So ironically, at number 3 is Maniac Cop 3. Before I got this one, I would have thought this movie would be quite low on the list as well, because you know it's a very low budget. It's even the kind of low budget one of the low budget ones that were released at that time. This movie is from 1992, and it just looks absolutely sensational. Again, a bit like Maniac Cop 2. A lot of stuff happens in the dark and at night, so you're getting that huge boost of the look on the OLED TV. This movie sort of comes to light. This movie is like a different movie. Now you can see these ones like Maniac Cop 2 and Maniac Cop 3 on a good setup, and also with a great 4K disc. you're seeing movies like this for like the first time, and you're appreciating what this movie can offer, as opposed to a dark VHS. Because some of the VHSs back in the day were literally that dark, you could never see what was going on. I remember watching Nightmares of Damaged Brain, and that was literally, there was just no picking most of that out, unfortunately. But it's a great movie. But I just like the fact that these are kind of, now you can see them for exactly the way they were intended, and this is why I do rate Blue Underground highly, because they're not putting extra gimmicks in here. They're not doing anything that you think, oh, they've really altered the colour in that, or they've put like something in that shouldn't be in it. They've done all this kind of like jiggery pokery to it. I think they've just went back and just done an honest transfer and given you an honest version of what that disc can kind of, what this movie can kind of bring to the table. So highly recommended, and picture quality is just, for a movie that really in essence shouldn't look that good, it looks really good. It's one of the best 4Ks I've seen. That's Maniac Cop 3. Now again, ironically, at number 2 is 2 Evil Eyes. Who'd have guessed it? 3 Maniac Cop 3, 2 Evil Eyes at number 2. This movie was made in 1990, and it features work by half movies. You can see it's like 2 movies in one. You get a segment that's shot by George Romero and another shot by Dario Argento. Wow. So that's got that for it. That's going for it. Now, if I'm honest, I didn't really care for this movie too much when I watched it back in the day. In fact, I didn't really think it was that much of a good movie. I did prefer the ones with the story with Harvey Keitel telling it, as opposed to the other one. But when I watched this one on the 4K, actually when I watched it on the 88 Films one that they've released, that one looks pretty good actually, and it kind of did make me think, oh, there's a lot more to this movie than I originally thought. Now, when I watched it on the 4K, the movie came to life, and when I was watching it again, when I was looking through these to say, well, where would I put this in the list, I thought this would have been sort of middle, about 5 or 6. But when I put it on with the added bonus of the HDR on the telly, it really has come to life, and the picture quality on here is like, it's pin sharp. The colours on here are unreal, they're sensational, and really the dark, especially outside, the HDR, especially when it's night and like trees at night next to a swimming pool, I've never seen nothing like it. It's something that's just, it's mind-blowing actually. And you know, I would have never thought, if someone said to me you would be talking about 2 Evil Eyes in this way of a 4K movie, I would have said, well, who's going to release 2 Evil Eyes on 4K? That's another thing where you think these movies are so under the radar. It's not as if they're doing ones that are like surefire wins. They could be taking a big gamble and releasing movies like this. They might never get the return back on them. So that's another thing you've got to give them credit for, the fact that they've got taking sort of chances and gambles. But this movie is, to me, I think it's a really good movie, and you can get it in the UK quite readily on 88 Films. But if you want the zenith of the movie, this one here is it. 2 Evil Eyes on 4K is like something you've never seen before. I know I say this about most of these movies, but I'm being quite honest when I say that this is like a dream come true for somebody who used to collect VHS back in the day, VHS copies, and you were lucky to see them, even though if they were uncut, you still had them, and you could basically not see what's going on. Even if they were a 5th generation copy, you still had them. But now those days are gone. If you want to get one that's like the best version out there of that movie, that particular movie that you're fond of, this is the way to go. So at number 2 is 2 Evil Eyes. So at number 1 on this final countdown is the final countdown. Can you see what I did there? Now, as you know, I've got the DVD of this. Now, for some reason, they've done the same thing. They've put the ship on here, but the ship is kind of souped up. It works differently than it does with the other lenticular. It's got a different movement to it. I think you want to do that with that one, and this one goes in and out of this vortex. It's an absolutely amazing presentation. To be honest, when this came out, I was expecting these ones all to be horror movies all the time. Now this one came out and I thought, I've never even heard of this movie. Though it's got a great cast of Kirk Douglas, Martin Sheen and James Farentino, who was in Dead and Buried. Now, looking at it, I thought this is going to be average. It's going to be something that I'm not really going to be interested in whatsoever. And you know, I'll have it in the collection because I do collect all of the Blue Underground 4Ks. It's got the CD soundtrack on here, which is a bit of a, it does sound like Jaws for some reason. It reminds me really of the Jaws soundtrack. Great soundtrack it is. But So when I put it on, I thought, well, I'll go with it. I will watch it and see what I get out of it. I've got to say, this movie is a fantastic movie. But the star of the show is the picture quality. The picture quality on here is like something I've never seen before. It is so good. You would not know when this movie was from if you didn't know from the way they were dressed or the stars that were in it. If you just put this on and got a bit of the movie that was like had no stars in it, and you're just showing people it, you would think it could have been shot yesterday. It's from 1980 as well, and it just goes to show that they will go back to these original negatives and they will bring out like a spectacular version of these movies. And they're taking gambles with this. This could have fell flat right in its face, because to be honest, I don't know anybody who's actually heard of this movie. A couple of people have, but not that many. It's not one that people talk about. Even when you talk about Kirk Douglas and Martin Sheen, they don't ever mention this film in the Final Countdown. It's got some good twists and turns, actually. It's quite a movie that you would not expect to be watchable after maybe one watch, but I can't wait to watch this. My wife would watch this, and because we watched Top Gun Maverick and we enjoyed it, there's a lot of aerial fights with dog fights with planes in here as well. Now there's an actual like set of people who are real fighter pilots in this movie. It's a real team that did it. So that's another reason to watch this movie. Everything in here is done by real professionals. So it's got a lot going for it, and it's quite rightly at the top of this list, because it's going off picture quality. That these ones don't come close to this one, even though there are sensational ones in there. They don't have they can't go near this one, because it is the next level in 4K. For an old movie released on a boutique label, you will never see anything like this. So at number one, that's the Final Countdown. Okay, here as I promised, here's the booklet from the DVD of Final Countdown. Now this booklet is here from 2004. I'm going to go through it and I'm going to see if there's anything in here that I think could make a good 4K, or I could see them doing as a 4K. Also on the back of the booklet is a box set which I've never heard of. I've heard of some of the movies in here, but it's the most ambitious and controversial box set in DVD history. It's called the Mondo Corner collection, and this is one. It's these real-life Mondo movies, and so to be honest, this box set has got to be massively out of print. But I'll take you through the movies that were in there. You've got Mondo Corner, Women of the World, Mondo Corner 2, Africa Adido English version, and Africa Adido Director's version, Goodbye Uncle Tom, Adio Zio Tom, and Godfathers of Mondo. So yeah, so can you believe it, that was even a thing? I've seen a few of those movies, and they're just like a one-off watch. I think it's more animal cruelty than anything else, or weird things that like tribes, like what they do in tribes and stuff like that, which is quite brutal in certain places. So I'll take you through the movies that they've got in their catalogue, and I'll tell you if any of these I can see or would like to see in 4K. So they've got The Crazies, with Giorgio Romero film. I'd love to see it in 4K. I don't know how good it would look because of the elements. I think that it was shot very low budget anyway. Daughters of Darkness, which is out there. Dead and Buried, which is out there. Django, which has been released by Arrow on 4K, believe it or not, and it's meant to be a spectacular version, so I cannot see Blue Underground doing that. So they might do their version of it. I don't know about that. Django, Kill, If You Live, Shoot. Never heard of that one. It does star Thomas Millian, which is great, and I would like to see them do that, because some of these old spaghetti western movies can look sensational because they're all shot outside. Emmanuel in America. I can't imagine them. It's directed by Joe D'Amato. I can't imagine them releasing that one. That is quite explicit. I have seen it. I do know that it's not a great film. It's all right, I suppose, but wow, there's some scenes in there which I can't imagine them ever releasing in the UK. Another one called Eugenie, the story of her journey into perversion. Never heard of it, but it's directed by Jess Franco, so say no more. Can't imagine that looking good. Fight for Your Life. I don't think for 1 minute that will get released in the UK, because it's got to be the most racist movie of all time. Although, saying that, the fact of it, the racism is kind of flipped around, which is a good thing. The Final Countdown. We've got that one. The Girl from Rio. Jess Franco, never heard of that one. God Told Me To. Now that is getting released on 4K. That's the next one after Uncle Sam. So that's one I will be getting. I think that's out next month. Grand Slam, never heard of that one. Marquis de Sade's Justine, never heard of it, but it's Jess Franco, so I can't imagine any of the Jess Franco ones coming out in 4K, but you never know. That'll be a bit of a tough watch, never mind. Manager, A Man Called Blade, directed by Sergio Martino. That might be alright, never heard of that one though. The Prowler, said about that. They would have to get themselves sorted out with that print because it's not that good. Cue the Winged Serpent. Now, with that being directed by Larry Cohen, who directed also God Told Me To, I can really see that coming out in 4K. Although, when the Cue the Winged Serpent does come into frame, it was like stop motion, so it will take the quality down a bit, but it's a decent film, so maybe. Quiet Days of Clichy, never heard of that one at all. Revolver, don't know that. That's got a lot of reading actually, so that might be alright. Run Man Run, never heard of that one. These are all Italian, like could say like crime ones. They look like them, or spaghetti westerns. Another one there, Sadomania, Jess Franco. Can't imagine that coming out. Although Sullen Kitty, which is directed by Tinto Brass, that's come out in Blu-ray, and Blu-ray looks quite good. It's not a movie for everybody, if I'm honest, but I could see that one coming out. I think they're going to do a 4K of that one. Although I think they would be taking a big gamble putting like Sullen Kitty out. I don't know who would buy that one. Another one called The Shape of Things to Come. Never heard of that one. Shockwaves. I would love Shockwaves to come out. I know they had released Shockwaves on Blu-ray and had a bit problem with the start of the movie. That sort of like wasn't going too well or something. There was some kind of problem with it. Hopefully we'll get that fixed up because I love Shockwaves. Got starring Peter Cushing, so you know, Nazi zombies. Yes, please. Snuff. Well, you saw Snuff before. I can't imagine that would ever come out in 4K because it would never look. The elements to that, I don't know where they would be. I can't imagine them ever having. I know they've done a Blu-ray of it, but I can't imagine that ever being a 4K worthy title. Although if it would come out, I would watch it. I would own it. The Toolbox Murders, that's out. Two Evil Eyes, that's out. Vampires. Now that one looks a really good movie actually, early 70s, and I would think that one would look really a bit like Daughters of Darkness. That would look quite good on 4K, so yes, that would be a good one to come out. Venom, which is, it does star Oliver Reed. Now I did see that at the cinema actually, and I did think that was a decent movie. Also Baba Yaga, I know that's an early 70s sort of Euro movie, don't know too much about that one. It might look alright. The Blood of Fu Manchu, director Jess Franco. And it's got Christopher Lee in it. He had a big sort of friendship with Christopher Lee for some reason. And, well, I don't know. That's with it being Fu Manchu and also Christopher Lee, that could come out. You've got Bone, directed by Larry Cohen, which looks like a bit like a blaxploitation movie. The Castle of Fu Manchu, Jess Franco again. The Christopher Lee Collection, directed by Jess Franco. That's probably all the movies that he shot with him as well. Can't imagine, however, Jess Franco and Christopher Lee got together, but obviously they did. Circus of Fear, Christopher Lee, directed by John Moxley. Never heard of that one, but that would be nice to get some Christopher Lee in there. That would be great. Another one that I think is great, Contamination, Luigi Cosi. That would be an instant purchase for me. I love that movie, and hopefully the Blu-ray from Arrow looks pretty good. So would that come out in 4K? I would love to see that one out there. And also Contraband, which is also called The Naples Connection, directed by Lucio Fulci. I know that's just come out as a brand new special edition on Blu-ray, which I need to get because I've got the DVD down there, which looks pretty good. It's uncut, and I tell you what, it's a violent film, that. So Contraband, aka The Smuggler, aka The Naples Connection, is an absolutely brutal movie from Lucio Fulci, which I'd love to see on 4K. That would be a big fingers crossed for that one. But another company's put it out on Blu-ray. I think Vinegar Syndrome. So the chances are of that coming out in 4K is pretty nil, unless the Vinegar Syndrome would do a 4K of it, because you know this type of things, to put it out and then there's a 4K restoration, and then they put it out as a pure 4K. Are you listening, Arrow? Okay, so anyway, I hope you've enjoyed that. I've had a lot of fun putting that one together, and I'm so looking forward to when Blue Underground release a 4K of a movie. Now, they don't release loads. It's not as if they release like 100 a year, which makes you like hard to like pick them all up, because they release them every couple of months. They release 2 here. They've released 2 in this period in June and July. Then probably won't release anything until the end of the year. So you've got, I know they're quite expensive, but you've got a lot of time to recover from the actual hit of paying the money for these movies. And I do get all of my movies from Wow HD. I send away for them. From them, they always come quite in about 10 days from when I pick them up, and always come in good condition, touch wood. So, thanks for watching, you take care, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers!
Chicken!